Is Darkest Dungeon mostly RNG? Let's take a deeper dive into the Steam negative reviews to see, fun game until you reach endgame content. Before champion dungeons, you can usually do well enough with almost any party comp as long as you cover your weaknesses and prepare for the area. Overturned, unfun champion encounters like the Hateful Virago will often party wipe you even if you're prepared correctly, being victimized by bad luck with dodges. Roguelikes are supposed to be a reward for careful, deliberate play, not punish you through RNG. Pay to bleep load of this game. Have fun missing 6 times in a row on a dodge of 20, losing multiple parties to one-turn death blows. In addition to this, Crimson Court DLC not worth installing unless you like extra bullcrap on top of your bullcrap. If you're a masochist gambler, enjoy watching hours of gameplay and progress go to bleep because of a streak of bad luck, then go ahead, purchase the game, have fun. This game desperately needs pseudo-random RNG. Constant misses are unbearable. I get the game is supposed to be challenging, but it's not challenging in terms of strategy and planning, just challenging in terms of how much patience and time you have to regrind through setbacks that were totally out of control. I don't like having my time wasted by games. Only played 11 hours, I think I know where they probably stopped. As we can see, RNG, or random number generator, to some people is the deal breaker, or at least the transparency of RNG is the deal breaker. Most games we play and love have some form of RNG to them. From games like Borderlands where the guns are random, MOBAs have critical chance and evasion chances, roguelike games have drop rates, and so on and so on. Therefore, the RNG that affects gameplay greatly isn't something that's uncommon or even bad. So why is it so compounded in Darkest Dungeon? This is going to take about 2 videos to do, so this first one's going to talk about the first half, which is combat. Before we spin the roulette wheel of pain and grinding, I want to say these few base rules. If I say something you disagree with, give me at least the next minute to explain, as in most situations I'll be stating facts. I will be doing my best to address perceptions throughout and at the end of the video, but it is most important to state what is factual and then to go into how the game affects our perception. Also, please try to be civil in the comment section, as this is single-handedly one of the most controversial points in the Darkest Dungeon community, besides saying the occultist is the better healer. Come on though, he crit 60s? No one can beat that. Finally, the usual, please like, subscribe, and comment down below, as I love the discussions and content created in the comments. To support me on Patreon or Subscribestar, please see it in the description below. Now, let's hope for no critical heal bleeds from the occultist. Short answer is, there are many systems of RNG, but you can fix many of them into your favor or mathematically eliminate them. Thus, at the end of a run, your skill and choices will use RNG in your favor, or will naturally overcome the bad RNG you do witness. Not to say you may have some bad dungeons here and there, but they will not be the ultimate reason why you've lost the game. First statement that needs addressing is, Darkest Dungeon has many systems of RNG. This is true, please do not say it is not. There are many components that function purely off of RNG, but for some reason RNG in people's minds means random things that go against you, but this isn't actually what RNG does or even means. Time to spitball some systems that can have a form of RNG to them. Which quirks you get for finishing a dungeon, chances of quirks, chances of diseases, dungeon layout, dungeon choices, enemies in a dungeon, amount of rooms in a dungeon, curios in dungeons, how many pathway blocks are there between each room or the total dungeon, which trinkets are available, scouting chance if not above 100%, surprise chances, chance to be surprised, critical strikes, speed, accuracy, most events in town, who shows up in the stagecoach, there's some roaming bosses, and what the heck happens in these stress facilities. Now, there are some in there that you want to raise your hand and pause the video and then proceed to start typing your 5-page report. Not every system is pure RNG in the sense that they cannot be combated against or actually made mathematically in your favor. The ones that can be mathematically eliminated are speed, accuracy, critical chance can get so high it's almost at least 2 out of 3 times in your favor. Scouting can go above 100%, however, double scouting will never be 100%. Force town events through certain dungeons, and certain curios will obviously always give you certain interactions based on the item you give them. This does not mean the other ones cannot be worked around or greatly swayed to your side, these are just the ones that could have been mathematically eliminated. With this being said, we will dive into 2 parts of RNG, combat and background related. Background related systems will actually be in part 2, as I will need a lot more time to describe those and I don't want to make this a 30-minute long video. I think the easiest RNG to notice is obviously the combat, as it is the only way to make it through the game. Sorry, no pacifists in here. Then there is the underlying RNG, which is harder to calculate or determine if you don't look at the numbers in Wikipedia. In the next video I'll be talking about quirks, diseases, and other aspects of RNG that you need to look into and understand more thoroughly since the system isn't forefront about it. Those systems are pure RNG, and they cannot be guaranteed to be in your favor unlike certain aspects of combat. Therefore, let's talk about combat first. The biggest components of RNG in fighting you probably notice are going to go this way: misses, dodges, getting critically struck, going last, and finally doing low end of damage or heals. As a new player, and even an experienced player, these are probably the things you notice in the hierarchy of importance, since if you can't hit your enemy, you don't need to worry about doing low damage, because it doesn't exist. We also expect enemies to hit, but when they land a critical strike, it causes a lot more additional stress, longer bleeds, blights, a stun, shuffle, or heaven forbid it takes you to a death's door. Thus, they bring us to awareness to their frequency much faster than just regular hits do. This is the part that may make or break your Darkest Dungeon experience. The game has a couple of power spikes, and I'll do my best to draft them out for you from a low to high power level based on Resolved. My presumption is most people have a good or decent time getting out of Apprentice, because there is a point where you almost feel godlike to the enemies around you, probably based on the maxed out skills and equipment for that level. Veteran can be a little choppy as the enemies start to be more into their true form, and then you progress into the initial started champion. And this is where I suspect when people try to get the Resolve 6 and the best trinkets, is where issues happen. This is where the speeds, stress damage, and raw damage numbers can become very problematic for a player if there are flaws in their gameplay. And trust me, if this is your first time through, there's going to be flaws in your gameplay and ideology because you haven't been tested to the max of your ability yet. Therefore, this is the time point I'm going to talk about. It's either the started champion or you literally never left Resolve 0, because this is where the strongest knowledge gaps and comprehension gaps exist in the game. Some people probably stop along the way due to grinding issues, but I already talked about in the first episode of that, part 1, which is Darkest Dungeon hard. We do have a grind component to that, so if you want to know about the grinding aspect and what I think of that, please go see the first video. The main point of this video is purely RNG complaints and how we can perceive that and better improve on it. So as stated before, at Champion, this is when dodges or accuracies reach their worst or highest, and this is when you actually start seeing the highest form of RNG, because you're probably not as prepared as you should be. Whether this is lacking the highest resistances, best trinkets, fighting new enemies you don't understand, maybe not the best skills, and negative quirks hanging around that used not to be an issue until you need the thinnest of margins to win. So your first time through will have many mistakes and errors, since these will be amplified by creatures and roaming bosses that you haven't seen. So this is RNG's fault technically, as you probably have 70% chances to hit, which is better than 50-50, and theoretically you could hit an enemy every time with 70% chance if you were to be the luckiest person alive. Or if you're the unluckiest person alive, you have a speed of 10, but you keep getting beaten by speeds of 5 or 7, and then you see yourself resulting in catastrophes and heroes dying. At the end of this setup, I've come to say yes, elements of RNG exist as people get hit by enemies. Some people may not get critically hit as much, and if you did get hit by a critical strike, it could literally mean the difference between life or death. Same attack, same instance, but someone ends up dying, honestly based on pure RNG. Depending on your surprise chance and how many surprises you actually get, could really depend on a much smoother dungeon, because the more surprises, the more you're going to move through the dungeon smoother. If this fact bothers you, that you're not going to always have a 100% outcome based on what you do, this probably isn't the game for you. Some people will see this as the game is only RNG, and that your best attempts and skills actually aren't useful. I believe that statement to be factually false, but I do understand the sentiment of a bad dungeon experience, as sometimes you played the best options and they still didn't work out for you. However, this is what I would argue falls into the unknown / stops the game from having a few characters and parties wreck the whole game. If everything could be calculated and expected, we'd come back to an idea of a pure puzzle rather than a strategic game, which we talked about in the first video. Now you may say, playing the best hand and still losing because there's a 5% chance to fail is not strategy. In the strictest of terms, yes, that is factually true. It's not strategy if you can always lose. However, if you were to win something 19 out of 20 times, I would argue there's something in there you are doing correctly, and if you do with repetition and continue to hold that high level of standard, you will breeze through, unlike most people who are relying on 65 or 70% chances to get through. The law of averages usually suggests you're going to have a way better time, and that's where we kind of go back to this grinding idea. You just have to keep throwing your best high percentage average at situations, because eventually it will definitely come out on top for you. Because how often are we praising and thanking RNG for the 5 critical strikes we get in a row, or the 4 critical strikes we need, or the crit heal on the hero who was on death's door and now suddenly has full HP again? It's probably not as often as we want to, and we usually only notice the bad over the good, and that's honestly life in general. So the bad RNG you see may actually be statistically correct, you just think it's worse because obviously when you miss, the ramifications of that miss feel pretty detrimental. So for combat related purposes, this is actually where you can minimize the most RNG. And if you're new to the game, experienced to the game, or stopped playing but you found yourself way to this video, you might find yourself either vigorously agreeing or probably by now clicked out, since I said that RNG in combat is actually one of the lowest, but it truly is. There are so many other systems in Darkest Dungeon that you should actually be complaining about RNG on, because they actually do not care based on your skill, how much you put into it, and who you are essentially. And we will talk about that in the second video. And once again, these systems are dungeon layout, quirks and diseases, people who come in stagecoaches. These are all very RNG related, so are town events, but actual combat can be reduced. If an enemy has a dodge of 20 and you have an accuracy of 130, you will always hit them. There's literally 0 RNG to that. That becomes a mathematical equation. Same as speed. If you have 20 speed and an enemy has 5 speed, you will always go first. So there are certain aspects, and if you get 100% scouting, you will always scout at least one room, and if you always scout at least one room, you're guaranteed to get a much higher surprise chance. There are many things we can actually do mathematically get rid of things that will allow your fighting to go so much smoother. It's just there's certain points, I'll pull up the graph again, at resolve 0 and at resolve 5, you're going to have the lowest power spikes and you will actually have the widest of RNGs. So if you can't make it through those 2 points because you don't like the aspect of that, that's okay, I understand that. But once you get to certain points in the game, you mathematically destroy the RNG in combat, it becomes much more favorable, and then you'll start realizing that the skill and strategy actually starts to matter. So this is the first part. With Darkest Dungeon having so many systems RNG, I need 2 videos. But the first part, I would definitely say there is small amounts of RNG in fighting once you hit your peaks in power. If you don't really prioritize accuracy or speed, you're going to find yourself relying on other aspects of RNG, or finding RNG hitting on you on the other end. Having quick strike characters with high accuracy is pretty much the best way to ensure RNG goes in your favor more times than not, because that allows you to stun, control, and kill enemies quicker, so you don't have to deal with their disgusting damage. Now that's my personal opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is combat pretty much just pure RNG, or is it for the most part 95% skill and maybe that occasional 5% chance? If I had to give a number for combat, I would honestly say it's probably about the 95 to 98% skill, and then you're definitely going to have about that 2 or 3% floating in there where, man, I did everything right and it just crapped on me. The next part, I don't exactly feel the same way about that, so stick around and find out. Thank you for watching.